going to share this. I'm just going to bring Jack on stage so we can maximize our time here. I do want to do a quick check. So yeah, so for anyone who is, if you're on a desktop, the chat should be showing automatically. So awesome, you're already seeing this. If you're on a phone, you do need to click that little chat button. I think we've got some people who got stuck with that, just not knowing how to bring it on. Jack, what's up, man?
Hey, can you see and hear me? I'm assuming
I can see and hear you. Your accent.
I'm only using one monitor, so I can't see you anymore. But
oh, okay. you should. All right. Yeah. I won't make any rude gestures. I promise. So I think I said this a little bit earlier. I don't know if you were on, but I have had people connect with me on LinkedIn to thank me for taking you out of retirement, bringing you back onto, this is like your comeback tour, I think.
Do you know, I'd love to know who they are, but also I don't want to ruin the mystery. But I'm so grateful to you for bringing me out of speaker retirement. Thank you. It's been a long 2 years.
Yeah, I'm going to keep them secret. They're my my new contacts that I'm going to use. So what do we got? Let's see. I want to actually kick this off a little early to make sure we got extra time in case anyone does have a question at the end. So your intro here is going to be pretty quick, short. You have, let's see, you built an agency from scratch, 8-figure revenue in 7 years. And you were, I like this. So I'm trying to get fun facts from everybody. Started as the PPC dork in 2006 with a love of heavy metal and Taylor Swift. Were you pumped about her new album?
Medium. I don't want to attract any hate today, but
interesting. My daughters were both like Swifties, and they just stopped caring now for the new album, and so I've actually enjoyed it more than they did, I think.
But and you know, I love her eternally, but I think every artist, you don't have to love every single piece of work they do. Yeah. And I saw her twice last year in person, once in Portugal and once in Edinburgh here.
Huh? All right. So you're actually a fan. Okay.
I am a real
never
fan.
gone to a concert.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Okay. Well, that's a little fun fact for everybody here. Let's get your slides up here, and I am going to hand over the reins now. Everyone, I will be active in the chat. If you need anything, let me know, and I'm going to be pushing some people because we need participation for this one, everybody. So you're going to be asked to do some stuff. So let's get active.
Yeah. All right. And final check before I launch in. You can see my full slide. Okay. Yeah.
Everything looks great.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Chris, for having us. And we're already into session number 3. So I'm going to dive right in because I tend to go right up to the limit of time. And since I can't see Chris, I won't see him like frantically waving behind the stage on camera to hurry up. So my sincere intent today is for this to be the one, you know, among everything else you consume in your whole year that helped change everything for you. I truly want it to be the one you look back on and say, yeah, that's when I got that piece of clarity I needed, or that's when I started to believe, because sometimes we all need belief just as much as clarity. And my goal ultimately is to help you scale your agency. But I do want to qualify that with, you know, this isn't a, you know, there's a lot of headcount and revenue comparison, like Steve said, and this isn't about that. It's whatever your version of success is. If it's 3 people and the most profitable, happy, fulfilling agency on the planet for you, great. Equally, if it's 300 people and 40% net margins, that's great too. All right, so that's where we're going. However, I do have to take you to a slightly darker place first, so bear with me. But if we all really try and absorb this picture, I think it's one many of us can relate to. I certainly can. If you think of it as your agency office, whatever and wherever that might be, we have this kind of negative section with clients yelling at us, or maybe even colleagues, a stack of work built up that's completely overwhelming, money falling through the cracks, left, right, and center, a complete disarray of projects on the other wall, and in the middle of it, there's a kind of pathetic looking desk where the agency leader is supposed to be holding it all together. And they're staring at this clock that we're sort of trained and conditioned to follow, but there's never enough time in the day, yet we're supposed to charge based on time as well. And it all just gets a bit too much. And I've been here. I've felt exactly how this picture is designed to emote. And there is a better way. There's a way to come out of these places too. And I'm not saying everyone will be in a dark place today, but I think we can all relate to this one, right? That's the key thing. So my job today is to show us how we can scale to millions of dollars a year in net profit without trading time for money, without thinking we have to take on loads more clients and become completely inundated, without any cash flow issues, and without any debt. So if that sounds like a good deal, I shall take you to the 2 keys that are the most important thing I could think of talking about today. And I know it made like the least sexy title on the planet, Scaling Through Value-Based Pricing and Agency First Policy. But I just wanted to focus on what really matters. And I feel like these 2 principles, they are often misunderstood or maligned in the agency world. It's kind of ironic, actually. The whole reason I ended up doing this presentation with Chris is I got into a comment debate with someone else on LinkedIn about value-based pricing maybe a month or 2 ago. And it kind of sparked this entire idea that it's something I really want to go deep on and talk more about. And so I understand some people have hesitance with these concepts. And my goal today is just to show you in reality, in my agency, how did I deploy them to achieve my goals before I left. Okay. So I like to frame the power of whatever I'm espousing, to put it into context. So I'm going to tell you a case study, a real client of my agency. So they met us at an event we were putting on with Google in Los Angeles in around 2018, 2019, that timeframe. It was half a day of content. We did, I think, 3 different keynotes. So one was me, one was Google, one was Uzi, a guy that I worked with for a very long time and love very much if he's listening. And they were struggling because, so they had about 15 stores over the country and a massive online e-commerce store. And when the person came to us, their problem was they were trying to manage advertising in-house because they'd been burned and let down by previous agencies, broken promises, the usual story. And every time they tried to push, they just kept meeting resistance, the point of diminishing returns, overwhelmed, couldn't keep up. And, again, all these fairly typical things. So we spent half a day educating them. We fed them both breakfast and lunch. We put on networking breaks in between to, promote collaboration between attendees. And even when they left at our events, we would give them a copy of a book like this, the reason I tapped it is to prove it's real. It's not like a glorified takeaway menu that would match the keynote, right? So if we fast forward, a few weeks and a few months, we have a few conversations post-event and, they ask for help and say, can we get started? And I say, yeah, sure thing. So our fee is going to be 20% of whatever you invest in media. And that's both going to be the same today and in 5 years and in 10 years. And this is the hinge. This is the really key point. Because look what happened 5 years later. So this exact same client is now investing $600,000 a month, US, by the way, in case anyone's wondering, the currency I'm talking about, in one advertising channel, right? And of course, for me as the agency owner, the bit that makes me happy is our 20% fee did stay the same. So it was about 120 grand a month, US, paid in advance and without question. All right. So when I talk about value-based pricing to grow your agency, this is a flavor of what I'm talking about. And I think it may be interesting for you to reflect on, if you imagine $120,000 a month or comparable in fees paid in advance without question, how hard are you currently working to achieve that? And might there be a slightly easier, dare I say, smarter way over time to do that, simply to make your life easier and your business more fun. But I do want to go a bit deeper into what went on behind the scenes on a project in a case like this. So we typically managed our clients in pods, our medium to large clients. So there'd be one campaign manager, one client success manager, one account director, and one ops person, right? That's a very typical mix of a pod. And these pods, because our clients were not juggernauts, they weren't massive. We really wanted to stay away from the enterprise space. We liked medium companies that were growing. So this pod could service a few clients each. So if you extrapolate the cost to the agency to service that client, let's say it's an average of 100 grand a year per head. Obviously it varies. So that pod cost me as the agency founder 400K a year. And that client's kind of share of that is 133, right? Very simple mathematics. But this is against the $1.44 million a year in fees, the 120K, right? So the gross margin on these projects was more or less 91 against 9. But I'm not pretending that was, the entire profitability of the agency. That's not the net profit of the agency. That's a very, very different thing. We all know there are many more costs of fulfillment and servicing these types of clients. There's, of course, the massive cost of acquisition, especially if you're doing something crazy like we were, touring the Americas, putting on events. But you get the concept. This is a type of thing it can lead to, and a type of sort of maths that can shake out that still ultimately allows you to scale with 20 to 40% net margin, which is, of course, much more realistic and achievable for really any healthy agency once they've figured out their growth engine and they have pricing and policy that is conducive to growth, right? So I hope you found that interesting, but you may also be skeptical. And I understand a lot of you don't know me yet. And even if you do know me, maybe you have some doubts, because you might be wondering, why would any client on the planet be okay with those terms and that price, and their agency earning such kind of almost obscene volumes of dollars and at such profit margins? And it all ultimately comes down to positioning and truth-based adult-to-adult conversations, which is a quote I love. I learned it in my Sandler sales training a couple of years ago. And power is the key here. If you imagine the typical scenario when an agency proposes anything to a client or a prospective client, if they've bought the lead off Bark, if they've pounded a cold email list, if they've done anything that basically isn't generating warm, red-hot inbound leads, their position of power is automatically diminished, right? So they're not really in a position to be setting, the tone in a negotiation room. And so certainly a significant part of what helps promote value-based pricing and agency-first policy is starting conversations with new clients from a position of equal power with equilibrium. And what I was describing earlier, for example, is just one way. If you're doing events and publishing books and they've met your team and shook hands and you've fed them, and then after the event you've given them an amazing audit, some brilliant resources and research and whatever it might be, by the time that conversation comes of that finally they bite, right? Like they just lay it all out there and say, we're struggling, we need to grow, please can you help? And of course we say yes, but with one key difference compared to the other scenario. We can say yes with a puffed out chest, like a horny pigeon, if that translates to my North American friends, with your shoulders back, with your chin up, because we know we're on an equal footing. And then I'll say to them, so presumably you want to grow your business, otherwise we wouldn't be talking and you wouldn't be spending your day learning stuff at events. And they say, yeah. And so I would say, well, what's the goal? What are you trying to achieve? And so they in this case might say, we want a store in every city across the US to 5x our e-commerce business and then eventually go public or be acquired. I would say, okay, that's a lofty goal, but why not? But then I would say, hey, is it okay if, I share my plans with you too? Leader to leader, business owner to business owner. They say, yeah, they have to, right? It's just etiquette. And I would say, well, I'm just trying to build a $15 million agency with like 20, 30% net margin. So not as lofty as what you're trying to do, but still significant for me. Is that okay? And do you think we could do that together? And again, by the time you've got to this conversation, this point in the conversation, no one can say no. So we're laying it all out there and we're telling them we're growing together. It's a joint business plan. We're here to help each other. And again, this really rebalances any relationship right from the off. And this affects everything that's going to happen for the next 5 years. So then I would say, listen, we're kind of all in. We're obsessive about helping our clients grow. We do not watch the clock. We do not bill by the hour or day. If you say you need something, our only question is how high or how quick. You're never going to get the sort of response, oh no, that needs to wait until next month. You've run out of resources. We are all in. If we have to pay $5,000 to bring in some Shopify code fixing expert because something's gone wrong with your attribution, we'll do it on our dime. Right? And we did that countless times. And what I ask for in return for being all in is we get to grow with you. You start when you want, you grow where you want, you go up and down and sideways where you want. But when you increase your investment, because we're going to make you successful and you're spending more to promote all your new stores and everything else, our 20% fee will become worth more. But I want you to know it will only happen if we have delivered value and you're making 100 times more than us. Is that fair? Is that okay? And of course, again, most of the time they have to say yes, right? And if they don't, obviously walk away. So this concept is something I'm kind of calling permission-based mutual growth. And it really is just the idea of putting yourself on an equal footing as a peer, as a business leader with your clients, instead of being a subservient service provider and being used like a vending machine in an airport. All right. So now my doubters still may say, well, that's all quite airy, fairy, fluffy waffle nonsense, which I'm prone to doing. So let's look at the maths. This client had a minimum ROAS of 20 to 1. And I know some of my industry peers are not keen on ROAS anymore. It's POAS, I think the cool kids are saying. But we know this client had at least 35% margin, excluding shipping revenue and after returns. Okay, so when it all basically came out in the wash, more than a third net profit from revenue gain from advertising. So then our job is to actually just dissect and translate this and show them what it means in real life. So with these 3 pennies here, these 3 coins, the 20 is obviously for the client. They sold a pair of shoes. Well done. You get your $20. The 1 in the 20 to 1 scenario is Google or WordPress or HubSpot or whatever the technology is that you're using to enable your solution. There's always going to be a third-party cost somewhere. That's what that is. So in this case, it's Google. They get $1, good for them. And then it's almost kind of pathetic looking at my cut as the agency owner. It's 20 cents. I mean, come on. So this is so tangibly real. And the client's share of $20 is literally 100 times mine. So even if my 20 cents on the dollar is worth 120 grand a month, why should I feel bad or guilty about that? Or why should that be perceived as being too much when they are quite literally earning 100 times more, which is an eye-watering amount in the tens of millions per month, okay? And it's profitable, which again is the key. So what I'm driving at here is however you price, as long as you can extrapolate the value, prove that you contributed to that value happening, and then just map out how everyone wins, and you set these expectations right from the very beginning, it's all good. Now, I must give a quick disclaimer. As you may have fathomed already, I ran a performance marketing agency. That's the bulk of my background since 2006. So this is a snippet of me with my team in Toronto a couple of years ago. But what I really want to say about this and why I'm highlighting specifically the background of my agency is policy. So the notion of agency first policy is universal. It applies to everyone. I don't care what you sell, how you sell it, what size you are, or where you are. Agency first policy, there are no sort of distinctions between who it applies to. Of course, on the pricing side, there are some nuances, And it's a bit easier and a bit harder depending on the type of agency you are. But I'm going deep on all of you today and doing my best to highlight examples and ways that you can still have it be applicable and successful. So I'm going to take a breath and a drink of water, and I'm going to ask you all to go to menti.com. So if you get your phone or any other device or just browser window on your computer, go to menti.com or scan the code, and then it should prompt you to enter these digits, 58285787. While you do that, I'm going to go and try and switch to Menti. I'm going to check if you got there. When you get there, drop me a little thumbs up or reaction or just something so I can see if you're in. And so I'll explain what this is while you all get in and put the code in. The code is on my screen too, menti.com 58285787. So in here, I'm going to ask you some interactive questions, and you get to enter your answers, vote, and all that kind of thing. So it's for me to help understand who I'm speaking with today and sort of where we're all at, but it's also for you to get to know each other. And you can also rest assured it is completely anonymous, so don't worry about that. No one's going to be like clocking your answers or logging your name against anything you put in. So, all right. So hopefully most of us have made our way over here. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the first question, and you should see it. So this is a word cloud. So you can type in whatever you want, and it will come up on my screen. And if there are commonalities, like the most popular answers will show up in the screen. My question here is, what do clients do that piss you off, basically, that keep you up at night, that upsets you, that drives you mad, anything like that? All right, so first answer is coming in. Poor communication, late payments, micromanaging, all very common. I've been out of my agency for more than a year and a half now, but this is definitely bringing back some trauma. Delays, ghosting, scope creep. Scope creep seems to be, so you see how scope creep's bigger in the middle? That means it's more popular. Lots of people are saying the same thing. Bargain hunting, not respecting us as a partner. Low commitment to renewals. Okay, so there's some clear trends emerging here. And for me, the interesting thing about an awful lot of this is policy can solve it. Whether that is external policy that you communicate to stakeholders like clients and partners, or simply policies that you abide to internally and stick to as a team. So thank you very much for sharing those ones with me. Now let's move on to another one. This is a simple A or B. When do you get fully paid? Either after the work is delivered or before the work. If you think you're somewhere in the middle, it means you're after. And that's why I deliberately did not include that middle ground option. All right, so yeah, so far about what I would expect. There's 70-80% majority of everyone getting paid after, which again is something we will address today. So there's a reason I asked that. We'll come back to it. Next question, how do you base pricing? So I know you might need to think about this one for a second more. Is it on the time taken to do something, to deliver the thing, on the perceived or proven value to a client, paid per result, like if you're a personal injury firm and they reward you with payment per case, or some other way? I expect a fairly significant mix here. Perhaps dominated by time, but we'll see. That's why I do this live in front of real people. I can't rig it. All right. So it appears roughly half are pricing on time, a couple on value, maybe a sixth perhaps, and the rest of you some other way. But again, this is really highlighting why I've chosen the topic that I have for today. And this is the final question for now. I'm going to take you back to the presentation. Are you satisfied with the growth of your agency, including its profitability? And to be kind, I've given a middle option here of kinda, because because I understand perfect may be hard to commit to or define. But I find this absolutely fascinating, getting to know you all. Okay. So it's fairly evident that around 2/3 are saying no. You're not satisfied with where you're at or your profitability. A few of you are in the middle, and a minority are in the yes, I am happy. So for you folks, I mean, well done, first of all. It's nice to see, because I know it's not easy. Hopefully today's session and all the other sessions will just help you make that an even bigger yep in capitals next time. For everyone else, this is why we're here to help, and I applaud you for being here seeking help. So thank you for your honesty and vulnerability. Right, you can come off Menti for now. I'm going to take you back to the presentation and we're going to carry on. And we will do one more right at the very end. So if you want to leave it on that browser or that tab, whatever works for you is fine. So to turn all those nopes and maybes with satisfaction into great big resounding yeps this time next year when Chris invites me back to his event if I behave myself, I have 5 paths to happy scaling to share with you. So let's dive right in. These are paths that I've walked and my philosophies that have really crystallized since exiting the agency world, or at least my agency world, over the last couple of years. Now, the first thing, bear with me, I start philosophically and move toward practical solutions. The first thing is, I've observed and felt myself, the self-worth of agencies is being just ground to dust by decades of client abuse, by a system that is grossly imbalanced by power. And that's why I was talking about power balance with that case study earlier on. And somewhere along the way, we collectively, because we're all part of the problem, stopped respecting ourselves and protecting our boundaries. And in a word, you could say we became meek, really, because we let the ones with the money, just because they have the checkbook, walk all over us and take advantage. We're indoctrinated to believe we should compete like undignified monkeys in RFP pitches in a race to the bottom for quality and price. We're conditioned that it's normal to send an invoice to a client for something you've spent a load of time and money delivering for payment maybe sometime next decade. We've been taught the story that we trade time for money and that that's the way to do things. And we've also just kind of learned to accept that client process and policy is law. So if we say our policy is X and they say theirs is Y, it's always going to default to Y. And that's not right. And I saw this with my employers for 7 years before I started my own agency. I saw the impact it had on them. I saw them miss payroll. I saw the stress. And I saw the stunted growth of what we could have been, but we were running on a really terrible model, or on the old ways, as I've put it here. So we need to unlearn everything, really, about how we thought we were supposed to run our agencies. And I want to try and make this a little bit more real now. So on the left here, well, it's on the left for me anyway, is Derek. He is a friend. I've changed his name so he can't yell at me. Derek and I worked together 14 years ago at an agency, maybe more. And a few months ago, he called me and said, hey, I'm leaving employment. I'm starting my own agency. I'm really excited. And so we have a few coffees, a few chats, online meetings, lunches, and he's just asking for my input, given that I've sort of already been there and done that, and he's just starting that phase of his journey. He told me how he was planning to price and deliver stuff. And long story short, it's $450 a day rate, flat. And he actually sent me a preview of his terms and conditions that he wanted to send to his clients. And in it, it specifically said payment at the end, invoiced at the end of the month when the work is completed, for payment in the next 30 days. So I obviously encouraged the bits that I thought I should encourage, but I also said to him, I absolutely would not have those payment terms, and I would not have a day rate if I was you. He made his own decisions, and I'm just observing from the outside. And I think for his own good reasons, he's got a family to look after and he's mitigating risk. However, the net result, the real impact here, is about a month later, I had 2 different prospects in less than a month who needed help that Derek could deliver. I knew their budget, I knew they were serious, I knew they were qualified, I knew they trusted my opinion. So I just wanted to find a good home for them. I wasn't asking for any commission or brokerage involvement. So I called Derek and say, hey, I've got these two things for you. The first one is $2,500 a month in fees. The other one's, I think, 5. They're pretty straightforward standard cases for SEO and PPC. And the whole principle was value-based pricing. So there were no deliverables or days or hours or specific things attached to it. That was just their fee budget to have this thing delivered. But of course, Derek was already fully booked by this point. So he had to turn these ones away, which would have had A, way less time and effort to service, and B, way more scalability, both in terms of their potential as clients and the fact it was value-based pricing, not a day rate. So Derek is overwhelmed and underpaid now, and he cannot accept any bigger, better clients. And when you continue doing this, as you grow your agency, you end up in this gigantic glass ceiling hamster wheel. You keep making these mistakes or believing the stories you were told, because I don't want to sound harsh, I do empathize. It really just, you find yourself running a $6 million agency and not making any profit and thinking, how is that even physically possible? Surely just by like law of nature, if we're making this much money and doing this much volume, we should have some cash at the end of the month every month, but you don't. And so you're in that dark place that I showed you at the beginning of the session. And I know a lot of you are, because you were kind enough and vulnerable enough to show me in your answers on the Mentimeter that like 20% or less of you are actually happy with where you're at. And that's what I want to fix. That's why I'm here. And so the best thing I can tell you at the high level is our first $1 million a year in net profit in our agency was really, really hard won. That was hundreds of clients over like 7 or 8 years, 20 plus full-time staff in Toronto, major growing pains. We eventually like fought and scraped our way to that. Great. However, our second $1 million a year in net profit annually, by comparison, after just a few decisions about pricing, policy, how we attract clients, how we negotiate with clients from a position of power, that second $1 million a year was a piece of piss, as we say in Scotland. It was like 5 or 6 clients, a couple more staff members, and that was it. No pain, just lots of cash, basically, to put it bluntly. So what I'm hoping to relay to you today does need a bit of a mindset shift, right? We have to drop the notion that swapping time for money is the way we're going to achieve our goals, because disclaimer, you're not, most likely. We have to embrace the fact that we are equals and deserve to grow with our clients through joint business plans. And I think it's really important to internalize success is not reserved for others, for clients. Like, why is it okay for a client to make tens of millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars, loads of profit, go public, have massive acquisitions and exits and all that stuff? But why is that like uncouth for an agency? I've never really understood that. Like, why are we so reserved? And why is our self-esteem so low collectively? Why do we not think we can openly say that's what we want to do too? So we have to push back against that and the entire broken system, like I said, with things like shunning RFPs, and ultimately focus on not winning clients, not flogging retainers, not whipping out rate cards to try and close something before the quarter finishes, but focus on making deals that are in everyone's best interest. And as if that wasn't compelling reason enough, we all know with AI and commoditization of what we do and technology, we can no longer, price and expect to scale on how we get there, on the work we're doing, the effort we're putting in to deliver something, because it's changing at such a ridiculous pace. And clients know it. They're not stupid. We have to respect our clients and say, we understand that, you understand that. But if we price on outcomes, you don't really care how the steak is made in the back of the kitchen. You just care you get delivered a damn good steak at the end of the day, right? And so to sort of close this first path to happy scaling, my simple question would just be, who's ready to light the match with me and just burn down the way we've been taught, the stories we've been told? Now, excuse me, with everything I share today, this concept may cause some the most discomfort, shifting in their seats. The notion of putting the agency first, right? It's a tricky one. But just think of it as the oxygen mask theory. You cannot possibly service and look after people if you have not looked after yourself, if you're starving, if you're freezing, if you're not well, if you haven't slept, right? And I'll tell you something. I know every agency needs to do better at putting themselves first for one reason, even if it wasn't the clear evidence in the Menti earlier, which was pretty resounding. The proof is almost every agency founder I've ever met, they have an alias email account. So whatever their domain is, myagency.com, they will have an alias. And that alias will be Helen at usually, or Janet, or something like that. And the entire reason for that email alias is to email clients about late invoices, pretending to be someone else, because they don't want to chase them and have the awkward conversations themselves. So if you have a Helen, a Janet, a Dave, a Patrick at who doesn't exist, I see you. So here are some of the policies we did with our agency. We rejected all bad clients. We declined all RFPs. Now, some of these, we didn't see the light straight away. I mean, that was 2019. I think I decided to say no to all future RFPs after a particularly bad experience where it was rigged and I found out. Late payments, didn't take credit cards, did not eat merchant fees. So, if someone paid through Stripe or there was a bank fee, we always pass that on. Didn't take back clients either, which again, just my prerogative, absolutely nothing to do with my childhood abandonment issues. And then we also fully insisted on every single client, regardless of tenure, size, scale, trust, whether we've had 18 dinners together or not, you pay automatically in advance every month, period. If you don't, we down tools, everything we're running for you stops. That's the deal. And again, we're emphatically clear about this at the beginning. There's no surprises. And beyond the joint business plans that I've already talked about, the notion of transparency is also key, because you cannot price on value if that value is opaque, because the client will not share their sales data with you or whatever it might be. So these are just some samples of stuff we insisted on, and we learned over the years, what suited us. But to give you just one example, the merchant fee one alone, when we were struggling a bit in like year 4 or 5, I was desperately just scanning the P&L, looking for ways to save money so I didn't have to fire people. And in the end, merchant fees came up, and through a series of policy corrections, we saved $400,000 a year in real money. I mean, that's not the theory, it's real cash, like 30 odd grand a month. So again, skeptics of agency first policy may think, well, isn't that a bit selfish, Jack? You selfish twat. And it kind of is self-preservation, but it's also balanced, right? So anytime I had a policy that was clearly agency first, I would have one that is client first too, equilibrium, both in reality and in negotiations. So first things first, I'm going to get peppered for this. If we were in real life, I think I would be getting eggs and tomatoes. We were month to month forever. And that case study I showed you at the beginning, along with countless others, stayed with us for 5 to 10 years because we were actually good at what we did and delivered results and cared about our relationships. And it's funny, when you're good at that stuff, you don't need a contract for 6 months, 12 months, 36 months. So straight away, I believed in us and our team. So I could give them that. I didn't really care. And I mean, let's be honest as well, how many people actually sue their clients to continue? It just seems completely pointless to me. And I also know people will say, well, you need clients locked in so you can sell your agency, but I don't think that's in the client's best interest. So I didn't do it and never did it. So whether it's that or policy of unlimited support, complete integrity, meaning, full transparency on data and returns, they have the autonomy to go up, down, sideways, stop, restart as much as they want within, their investments. So it's very balanced is what I'm driving at. And the net result for us is there's no wasted time. We're not logging in as Helen saying, hey, the boss has asked me to check if you can pay this invoice, please, because Sandra's cat needs an operation. It's just something we don't even think about. Didn't exist. It literally did not exist in my world. And then the ultimate benefit, our team's always motivated to do a good job and work their best and go above and beyond. And clients feel happy and safe, which means they stay for longer and spend more money. So everybody wins, ironically, through agency first policy. So coming back to those things that drive you mad, you shared with me on Menti, ghosting, micromanaging, late payments, whatever it might be. My sincere ask to you right now is take a piece of paper, write down a policy to solve it. Just whatever the top thing is, late payments. Okay, well, write down a policy to solve that right now and stick to it and commit to it. So if the issue is late payments, that's what's driving you mad, keeping you up at night. The obvious, simple solution is payment in advance. No exceptions, period. That's what I did from day one in 2013. So while you're thinking about that, I'll say, don't worry about solving everything at once. I understand there's a lot of pressures and challenges. You don't need to do all this overnight. So, pick the top 3 things that are really hurting your growth and happiness and sense of contentment with running your agency. And, roll those policies out to new clients first. You don't have to do them all at once. And then see, how those new clients respond, if it affects your closing rates, your retention rates, your upsell rates, your satisfaction scores. Then once they're proven as effective new policies, just figure out how to grandfather them in on your legacy clients. So when we did this, for example, we raised our minimum pricing when we stopped accepting credit card payments because of merchant fees, whatever it might be. We would go and identify like the 10 clients that are causing us the most headaches, because we would have typically up to 200 at any one time. So we would just go and find like the 10 to 20% where we're leaking time or money and apply the new policies to them, respectfully, calmly, quietly, give them a choice, give them some time to adjust to the idea, but say, hey, by the end of the year, I really need us to switch policy here or switch payment method here. And we move forwards. So it's not something, hopefully, that you find intimidating or daunting. You can play around with it and phase it in. So ranting about policy aside, let's move on to value and the notion of value-based pricing, to which there are 2 parts. The first is defining our value. And to be able to do that, we have to know our value. We have to articulate it and then actually deliver it, right? Sort of stating the obvious. Now, it's interesting, I don't know about you all, but when I was running my agency for almost 12 years, I found it incredibly difficult to nail the unique value proposition. I think that's why people like Chris and Steve exist, who were on before me here on stage 1. And it's kind of ironic that once you're out, you can see how easy it is if you follow a system and have a clear mind. But when you're in the trenches, it is so hard. There's so many noises and voices. So when you try to ask an agency leader, like, what's your UVP? Pitch me. We're in the elevator. We have 15 seconds. Hit me. They generally sound like they've swallowed like a hive of bees and Gorilla Glue. They're just waffling nonsense. Often don't even say what they do. They can't articulate it. So needless to say, I'm not here to lecture you on that. There's plenty of other experts. Chris has already done an amazing job, but that is part of this process. So then you start thinking about, well, let's define what we're pricing for. Are we selling a shoe or a shoe buying experience? Because your leverage in these negotiations is often just as much about the intangible as the tangible. It's notions, it's feelings, it's bonus touches, it's stuff that goes into the subconscious. Is someone willing to pay a bit extra for something or a premium pricing plan if they're going to learn more? If they're going to get a specific problem solved? If they're going to meet a time crunch? If they're going to have a positive experience? The answer generally is yes. Even if we don't realize it, the answer is yes. We will all always do that as humans. And so we kind of have this notion that I've made up of 5-star ROI. It's like, it's a 5-star experience and there's some tangible value, ROI, whatever you want to call it. That's what is your leverage in your negotiation. It's that unique blend and combination that you're offering your prospective clients. And so then we begin to wonder, well, how do we quantify this? If the client is wanting to grow from 20 to $100 million, that's a fairly easy one. Like, we're going to be part of that journey. We can help you get there with whatever it is you do. And we believe our proportional contributing scope of value there is X. So that's what we're going to charge on. We're not going to claim all the credit, obviously, for that 80 million growth plan, but we want some, whether it's 2%, 5%, 10%, 15%, it's going to vary on the situation and how good a negotiator you are, obviously. So you can go at that really high level, or just make it more practical. Like if there's a 200% increase in traffic or reduction in abandoned carts, like you see on my screen, it doesn't really matter what it is for the purposes of this conversation. You just have to identify what is some form of ultimate tangible value to the client as a result of our engagement. And I want to agree what is my scope of how much I'm impacting that. And I want to be bonused on the outcome. Yeah. And if you're struggling, because I know I'm moving at a bit of a pace, but if you're struggling with any of this, believe me, there is always a value. If you look through the magnifying glass here, you can see a bit of a relay race going on up the hill to the dollars, to the outcomes for the client. By the way, this is the client's dollars, not ours. And I feel a bit sorry for some of them, because some of us have it quite easy. I would put myself as this runner because I was the performance marketing agency. But here you've got marketing strategists, you've got developers, you've got brand designers and strategists. They've all been part of this end result, right? They've been part of the relay race of value to the client's end goals. But I can promise you one thing. If I'm running this agency, I'm getting paid. And I'm getting paid based on value. Comparatively, if I'm at the tail of the relay, I'm probably not. But there's only one reason why not. It's because they haven't asked, right? They haven't seen this way forward. They haven't said, hang on a minute, creative is at least 33% of digital marketing success. Everyone agrees on that and knows that. So why wouldn't I get 33% of whatever the bonus to the PPC team is? Like, we're contributing to that value. That is a scope of value, right? So I promise you, if you look hard enough and think, putting yourself first enough for a change, you will find these opportunities to identify and charge on value. So this brings us to specifics about setting this pricing, which I know probably many of you have been waiting for. So I hope I haven't built it up too much. There are two core concepts here. There's two things working in tandem. We need a retainer and a bonus. Now, I can only put so many words on my slide without ruining the visuals. If you prefer to switch retainer for baseline income, project fee, minimum income, MRR, whatever it is, it's some sort of base initial fee for the engagement. The way I think of it, it's like, keep the lights on and feed the dog with that money. That's great. But I'll buy my yacht with the bonus. And to be honest, that's how most of us would view most of life, right? So I'm fine with the notion of a retainer. And if you have to base it on time, fine. I'm not going to fight you on that. I'm not here for that fight. So whatever your retainer is, $1,000 a month, $2,000 a month, $5,000 a month, it's your base, right? If you do projects, if it's, a 6-month project for 50K, just break it out per month. So you've got some semblance of, all right, this is what we're getting as a baseline to feed the dog. And then, of course, what we really want is a bonus. And again, I'd be fascinated really to know how many agencies are actively asking for this, because we should be. And again, it can be worded in 100 different ways. Value-based pricing, bonus pricing, scalable pricing, reward pricing. I really don't care what you want to call it, but you understand the concept. And the key with the bonus part is it's infinitely scalable. Has zero correlation with time, effort, deliverables, inputs. And that's where the gold is. And that's what I want to help you get today. And if you want like just an easy, real practical example, take me as someone who's found themselves becoming an agency advisor, having never intended to. I will have a base of a few grand a month as a retainer, just to like motivate me to get out of bed and make sure the customer is taking me seriously and investing in their growth. But my real incentive will be 10% of whatever they sell their agency for in 3 years, because I know I'm going to make them successful. Yeah. So that's why I'm really doing it in that case. Commercially, of course, there are many other altruistic reasons for doing stuff. So I'll fire you through some examples for every type of agency. We've already spoken about media, so you'll all be bored of that. But if you're an SEO agency, why couldn't you get paid for hitting certain KPIs or metrics, whether it's rankings, organic traffic, revenue from organic traffic excluding brand, whatever it might be? Why wouldn't you have a percentage of that uplift If you're a web agency and you've redesigned a site and the conversion rate shot up 50%, if you're a branding creative, like I said, I mean, even the person who's designed this for me, they will be bonused on any work I receive from it in the future when I pitch. I'm not pitching today. But if I did, they will be paid a bonus of any future recurring income I get as a result of this very creative. That's how real this is. A PR agency, if you're doing some PR and you get the personality or brand TV time or stage slots for public speaking, interviews, press, in target press, whatever it is, why aren't you being bonused on that? Social media agency, again, whether it's metrics or a percentage of traffic or revenue uplift from their channels. CRO analytics, exactly the same thing as the web development. Just get paid for a sustained improvement in something you're supposed to add value to. Same thing for video and content, and exactly the same thing for email or marketing agencies. So it's almost tedious going through those 10 examples because the formula is the same. Identify how you're improving their business, quantify the value, and take a piece of it rightfully, and of course, respectfully. So if you survive that whirlwind with me, we're approaching the end of the paths of this wonderful walk. And a quote that I really love as we think about implementation and bringing it all home is, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're probably right. So let's talk about sort of tripwires to avoid and how to get this thing over the line. Now, I have once again descended into a slightly doomy, gloomy, frightening picture here, but for good reason. I'm trying really hard today to just share what worked with me. And it's not that I was a genius at the time. I made 1,000 other fuck-ups and had a really terrible time the first 5 years growing my agency. By the end, I was having a ton of fun and making a ton of money. But before that, it was horrible. I have felt fatalistic about it. I've had friends who knew the agency, knew the business, knew the market really well, tell me to my face, you're not going to succeed. What you're trying to do, it's never going to happen. Just throw this one away, start again, do something else. I was really told that. I swear on my son's life, I was told that in year 3, 4, 5 by people I really respected. And whether you've been trodden down like that, like me, whether you're in a tough moment and it's hard to believe the utopia that I'm painting, or maybe if you're not just massively confident in your ability to deliver value right now, I understand there are lots of valid reasons you might be skeptical of agency first policy and value-based pricing. Also, maybe you're just a self-sabotaging nihilist. I don't know. Jokes aside, I'm sharing this to say I know it's tricky, but there is a better way. And that's why I'm here. And Chris is here. And 15 other presenters. And your peers. I mean, peer support, by the way, I cannot rate that highly enough. I did not have enough of that in my time. If I could go back and change one thing, it would probably be just embrace and get way more peer support through communities and events and support circles. But that's a bit of an aside. But I do really just hope to show you today there is a better way. But you just have to believe you deserve it and that it's possible. And whatever it is you're trying to achieve, I'm quite sure that you can. But I will come back to one really key point. Being meek is incompatible with this approach. As I said, you have to go into those meetings like a puffed up, horny pigeon. Chest out, chin up, believe in yourself, believe in your value, and command it. Now, you're going to encounter objections. That's a given. Clients will say, no, we pay 60 days in arrears. Take it or leave it. They'll say, our previous agency, they charge this way or that way. Yours is kind of obscene compared to that. Clients would say, I'm not paying the merchant fees. That's crazy. That's always the burden of the merchant. Whatever it might be. So I'm not going to sit here and actually give you a script to answer 17 different objections. I'm just going to suggest you put yourself first for a change. Walk away. My best mentor I've ever had, a guy called Doug Shust, who I really respect and miss because he's still in Canada, where my agency was. Haven't seen him in a long time. The day I launched my agency, he said to me, I was literally about to go on stage. I'm not kidding. I was about 10 seconds from going on stage to 300 or 400 people. And he said, the day you walk away from a $1 million deal is the day you deserve one. And about 5 years later, I realized what he meant, because I spent the first 5 years chasing anything I could get my hands on and closing anything I could get my hands on, like a bloody rabid hyena. And it was only once I started walking away from these clients and prospects, I realized what he meant. My mind and space was just freed up to do what we're supposed to do, to operate in a space where we are respected and valued and focused, only working with good people who actually make us feel good about going into work. And everything changed. So that's my best advice, is to pass Doug's wisdom on, is the day you deserve $1 million deal is the day you walk away from it. And when you start putting yourself first, you find yourself having to walk away from an increasing amount of things. So yeah, we probably ended up declining almost half of our prospects, and we got 300, 400, 500 prospects a year at my agency. There was always that little tinge of, oh, did we have to say no to them? But it all worked out. I do also want to give just some like health and safety warnings of running this system, of adopting this policy almost. And that is, you are gambling to an extent. I mean, I would say either way you're gambling. I mean, staying with a broken, imbalanced dying system is probably more of a gamble in my view, but hey, that's subjective. So the specific risks here, you are gambling because, as I say, the philosophy of value-based pricing, you don't have to go crazy and be all in like we were. Like, we were literally no limit. We did. Anyone will tell you, ask anyone who worked for me at Utopia Ads, like go on my connections. We didn't track time once in 12 years. I'm not kidding. Not once. We over-delivered. We did go a bit mad with that kind of whole over-servicing ethos, but that was just our thing. That's what we did. So we had lost leaders. Right? We had clients that, you know, we're putting all that effort in when they're only worth $1,000 a month to us, really hoping they turn into 10 or 20 or 30, right? Then we also had cases where we did that and it didn't work out after 9 months, 12 months, 6 months, whatever it is. And we've invested and front loaded all this effort for nothing, ultimately. But you kiss enough frogs, you learn to refine who you accept and target and all that good stuff, and just get better as an agency over time. And that case study I showed you right at the beginning of the session is something that becomes reality. And then it's like, okay, we did that once, that was cool. 3 times, oh, all right. And 10 times, okay, this is a trend. It's not a fluke anymore. Like, we know how to do this. We know how to scale this model. So just be careful is all I'm saying. It's impossible to pick 100% of winners. I'm not claiming that. But to the best extent possible, try to pick, you know, businesses who seem to be in a position to grow, a good management team, good product, good market fit, good offer, good brand, all that stuff. And then you do need to be very involved and proactive in helping them understand their value, would be the other thing I'd tell you. A lot of clients still don't really understand their value chain and what's happening. And if they spent X, what is the Y outcome? And that's probably universal across every type of agency. So just be close to that. You may need to do some consultative work at the beginning before your engagement to help them understand this and fix their attribution. Because of course you cannot charge based on value if the value is unknown. The other element is you start tracking clients on margin. So again, in the sort of traditional model that I know most of you are currently still charging on, when you trade time, it's quite easy. You sell 5 days and you tell your team, do not spend more than 5 days on this client, and everything's okay, as long as you've got your modeling correct. But in this scenario, again, it can be so erratic and clients are up and down and sideways, and especially at volume, you really need to start tracking gross and net margin per client and thinking more quarterly and annually in terms of your returns. Otherwise, again, you're going to get stuck in this penny pinching, you know, not really all in for growth mindset. And of course, if any of those margins are not right and you've done everything you can to fix them, it's just a lost leader. You need to terminate them. Hence that message on the tree. So that concludes this section of the presentation. There's a little bit more to come. And that's really everything I can tell you about the 5 paths I walked ultimately to getting to where I wanted us to be. I'm not saying it was perfect, of course, by any stretch, but we, you know, the last 4 or 5 years before I left were really quite something. and we achieved some pretty special stuff together. And now it's your turn. So my closing thought on this part, and then we're going to go and do a Menti, one last Menti before we finish. My closing thought on this part is simply, at a minimum, if you take nothing else away from today, agency first policy will change everything for you. It will shift your foundations. It will solve 98% of your headaches and allow you to see and plan clearly for the first time in a very long time. And you are in full control of that. At a maximum, if you believe what I've said about value-based pricing and you're beginning to see the light there, that will just completely and utterly obliterate anything you previously considered a glass ceiling. And I'm smiling because that's a very exciting thought. So let's have a final Menti and just see how we feel and what we've internalized. And then I'll come back and share one or two more slides and we're all done. So if you head back to menti.com, I'm going to navigate my way over to, hopefully it behaves itself. So if you try and once you're in and loaded, menti.com 58285787, if you shoot me a reaction thing, a thumbs up so I know you're in and active, it's working, good, I see that. Smashing. Okay, so I just have two questions for you here, although they are sort of complex ones that will take a minute of thought. So first one, be as brutal as you want. You can pick up to two answers. How do you feel about today? Like, how has the session helped you feel? Do you feel positive and inspired or uninspired and not in agreement? That's okay. I know I'm not going to be on the same page as everyone, but I just want to know how you feel. Okay, so far, no one's hurting my feelings. You don't have to be nice. In all seriousness, I mean, 100% of you are in the two positive answers so far, and that has just made the last month of preparation I've put into this worth it. That's great to see. So let's turn that into some action. I'd like you to think about these four statements, and you can take a minute, and then there's a sliding scale from 1 to 5. 1 means you completely disagree with everything I've said. 5 is the opposite. You fully agree. Trading time for money is not our future. I need to redesign my pricing to be value-based. From now on, our oxygen mask goes on first, and I need to redesign my policies to be agency first. So give these a minute to settle in. I always find this part a little bit like watching a race, one of those virtual horse races. Okay. So this is fascinating. So the average is 4.3, which again, you're obviously a very kind audience. Thank you. But more importantly, I'm glad it's resonated because this is anonymous. You don't have to lie here just to make me feel good. So what's fascinating to me here is the sentiment is high, but the weakest answer by a mile comparatively is that trading time for money is not our future. Now, I'm not trying to change anyone's mind any further. I've done that. But I think maybe if I had said not explicitly, maybe your agreement would rate higher. Because remember, it's okay if you want to trade time for money for like your base retainer to feed the dog and keep the lights on and pay the rent. But like your riches, if you want to call them that, the scalability, the true rewards, the infinite rewards, they're not time for money. They just can't be. Doesn't work. Anyway, very, very interesting and great to see. On the most part, there's really good alignment. And I hope you all take those statements as kind of self-affirming action, you know, for you, like affirmation statements almost, to move forwards. So I'm going to finish in 1 minute, Chris, if that's right. I know I'm just coming up on time. I want to share my last mantra, my last thing. And I believe you can add a 0 to your revenue or profit without sacrificing your health. And that's something I was kind of good at one part and not very good at the other. I got diagnosed with Crohn's disease in 2019, very late, and ignored it basically and ran around the world having fun, growing my business, starting a family. And this year I had 2 life-saving operations in February. That's why I left my agency. I never wanted to sell it and I miss it dearly, but it is what it is. I had an amazing journey and an amazing adventure. But this mantra is really, really important to me. And that's why I try and spend time thinking about how can I solve problems for people, for my peers, who I still consider my peers, with content like this. Okay, that's why I've shared everything I've shared today. And now, as I've taken some time to get better, I'm enjoying my new life as a part-time, much slower paced, relaxed agency advisor. And if I feel like it, I might launch a community next year. While I was trying not to die, I did write a few books. Some of them are on the screen here. I've already shown you one, others on my shelf. But if you would like to read any more of my thoughts, you'll find these books on Amazon or on my website, which you can find here, or follow me on LinkedIn. And I want to give one final shout out, Chris, and you cut me off in 20 seconds. Everything you have seen today, every design of every book I've ever written here on the shelf, my website, was all designed by Sarah Nicario. She is my creative strategist and just creative muse. She worked for me full-time at the agency for 5-6 years. And ever since I left, she's been helping me rebuild my own brand in my new life. So massive credit to Sarah. If anyone ever needs a creative strategist, I highly recommend you take a screenshot of that LinkedIn profile. All right. I'm rooting for you guys, wishing you all the best and thanking you for your time today. Cheers.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, Jack. Don't have a lot of time, but I do want to hit on the horny pigeon thing. I don't know that that's I mean, it translates.
You don't have horny pigeons in Maine?
I guess we understand people don't normally, say that here in the States. But point made. Great presentation. Thank you for joining. And I'm going to kick you off now so that we can bring Danielle on.
Adios.
So.